All right, the White House on Thursday did knock down talk of banning Russian oil imports, warning that doing so would further spike already high price of petrol for Americans. Here's Jen Psaki, White House press secretary.
Our objective and the president's objective has been to maximize impact on President Putin and Russia while minimizing impact to us and our allies and partners. And I know you've heard me say this a few times before, but we don't have a strategic interest in reducing the global supply of energy. And that would raise prices at the gas pump for the American people around the world because it would reduce the supply available. And it's as simple as less supply raises prices. And that is certainly a big factor for the president in this at this moment. It also has the potential to pad the pockets of President Putin, which is exactly what we are not trying to do. So, as the president has said, we carved out payments for energy, trade, and transport from our financial sectors, sanctions, with that in mind. I would also note that we have been taking steps to degrade Russia's status as a leading energy supplier over time. That includes, of course, shutting down Nord Stream 2 or preventing Nord Stream 2 from operating. That's why we're surging LNG to Europe to help accelerate its diversification from Russian gas. And I think you've also seen European leaders talk about the need to reduce their reliance and to diversify. And we are continuing to look at other options we could take right now to cut U.S. consumption of Russian energy. I mean, for us, if you look at publicly available data, it's only about 10% of our imports. But again, reducing the supply out there would have an impact on prices and on prices at the gas pump.
All right, joining us to discuss further is Sanyade Okoli, CEO of Alpha African Advisory. Good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Richard.
Heavy topic today. There's also talk of using natural resources as a realignment of the geopolitical tensions. A gentleman, I think his name is Roy Grimm. He's with there he is right there on our screen. So he was making the case. Ryan Grimm, that's it. Ryan Grimm. He's an editor with The Intercept. That's it. He's an editor with The Intercept, and he was making the case here that renewable energy could somehow lead to a geopolitical assignment. But I want to get your take first on what the Senator Lisa Murkowski was trying to do in banning U.S. imports of Russian oil.
I think if we just step back for a minute, I think one of the things that has really struck me from this whole situation was that we are reminded about how closely connected politics, economics, business are in the first instance, and how those are linked to even basic things like sociology, psychology, what makes people do what they're doing, why they are doing it.
Right.
And another aspect is the fact that we all have perspectives, right? Mm-hmm. But no one person sees the full picture. And we just need more of us to have the humility to recognize that our views are a partial view of a certain situation, and other people's perspectives, even when they don't necessarily agree with us, may actually have some merit.
So you're saying Putin has a case? Is that what you're saying, or?
No.
Okay.
But I think a lot of people agree that Putin was provoked.
Right.
But should he attack a sovereign nation? No. But I think it is important that we do acknowledge that this has long history.
Right.
And contrary to what some people might think, he didn't just wake up one day and decide he's attacking Ukraine. There's history to it. But what he's doing is wrong.
Right.
But to the question of banning the importation of oil to the U.S., I see where they're coming from. But you took both stories, the Senator,
the White House response. Yeah.
And the White House response is basically saying, well, let's step back. Russia is the second largest exporter of oil.
Right.
The world is dependent on oil.
On oil, right.
About 60% or so goes to the EU. 20 goes to China.
Right.
So we are all hugely dependent on Russian oil and Russian energy, because even when it comes to gas, a whole lot of the European countries import a lot of their gas from Russia. And the tension there is, how do we hurt Russia without hurting ourselves too much?
Good question.
And that's the fine line that world leaders are trying to straddle at this time.
What do you make of the talk of renewable energy as somehow being able to, because he depends so much on petrodollars. So while you've got the Lisa Murkowski and the Senate saying, okay, stop importing his energy. And then you've got Ryan Grimm, who is saying, realign the whole picture and move to renewables. If you move to renewables, then these dictators, strong men, can't depend on petrodollars anymore to fund military conquests in other neighboring nations. And we've talked about renewable, but is that even practical?
It makes sense in theory, but not for today.
Right.
The reality is we've been talking about shifting towards renewable, not just for political reasons, but even from the environmental impact. And we see how long it is taking us to have a meaningful shift in that direction. So that's not a solution for today's problem. But it is long-term thinking, and it's saying, yes, let us keep pushing in that direction, but it's not going to solve today's problems.
Gotcha. Kenya has been apparently hit, estimated, I believe it's 10 billion shillings in exports to Russia by these sanctions. Do you, if you're the Kenyan government or anybody else who is exporting that has trade relationships with Russia, do you say, it's for the common good, these sanctions are what they are and we'll just have to swallow this hit, or is this a consequence of what's going on?
In a word, yes.
Yeah.
I think the reality is that, again, this reminds us as to how inextricably linked all our fortunes are because of, global trade, everything moving backwards and forwards. So we saw it with COVID.
Right.
We saw how something going in one place ended up affecting the whole world. Unfortunately, we are seeing it again. So today we hear about Kenya, but over the coming days, weeks, and months, we will see it having unintended or undesirable consequences in different sectors and different countries. It's the sad reality.
Wheat is another one, right?
Yes,
Russia exports wheat to a number of African countries.
2% of its export is wheat, yes.
Right.
Yeah, it's the reality.
Up till today. What do you make of the impact of economic sanctions? Do you think, not to put you on the spot, I mean, this is, it's what's going on right now, but what's your assessment of how effective they are?
I think the jury is, I'm not sure the jury is even out. I think there's a view that economic sanctions, they bite.
Right.
But what you can't always tell is how the governments will respond to the bite, right? So if we take a country like Cuba,
right,
they had sanctions for like 5 decades.
Right.
But those sanctions never achieved what the US government had hoped for it to achieve. So equally with Russia, it is biting. We've seen what's happened to the ruble. We're seeing, Chelsea being sold by Abramovich. It is having, that's at the micro, dare I say, but you're seeing micro and macro implications. How they're going to respond, I wouldn't even try to pretend to say that I know.
Going back to the White House response, not to get cynical, but there's midterm elections coming up, and Jen Psaki was saying that we don't want to raise fuel prices more for everyday Americans who are, so if you reduce more of the supply of Russian oil, you're going to, do you have sympathy for them for thinking about politics and winning an election and not wanting to raise fuel prices, as opposed to the lives being lost in Ukraine and how Lisa Murkowski is saying that, remove the oil imports and you really hit Putin hard. Balancing those two, do you understand the
I think
want to bring that in there.
with everything and with all the sanctions, and it's not just the US, even Europe, everyone's having to think, how far am I going to cut my nose?
Right.
Because at the end of the day, you know, some of this stuff is enlightened self-interest. But may I throw another cynical view? What about people who might think that the US are taking time to get themselves sorted on shale?
Right.
Because now the prices have gone up. It
Right.
makes a whole lot of these shale projects more
Profitable.
viable.
Right.
So you may find that in the future, they're prepared to ban the US oil imports because they've sorted out their source.
Sanyade Okoli, CEO, Alpha African Advisor, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us.